It was 9:30 p.m. and I'd seen so many giant headlights over the prior 75 minutes I had to go take a cold shower to take some of the heat out of the air. It also gave me a great way to spin out this intro so we get past the arbitrary point where the YouTube algorithm loses its mind about you saying rude words. Because I probably can't say the name of this week's review without getting myself into trouble. Shucks, let's just risk it. This week's retrospective is Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, a 1988 horror classic. Part sexy, part noir, and a whole lot of satire. Starting off with the plot, it's a pretty simple one. Jack Chandler is a wise-talking 50s PI working in 80s LA looking for a missing girl. In his search, he happens to stumble across a dark and twisted ancient Egyptian cult who use chainsaw-wielding hookers to satisfy their god's bloodlust. Let's be honest, you aren't watching a film called Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers for the in-depth and sensical plot. You are watching it for the title, in the hope that it has a whole lot of that in it. And I'm happily here to tell you, yes it does. It gives you exactly what it says on the tin, and I love it for that. In fact, you could argue the plot purely exists to serve as a dose of the title every 5 minutes. The film is only 75 minutes long, and after a short introduction to our protagonist, Jack Chandler, we are treated to a hilarious scene where a chainsaw-wielding hooker goes to town on a poor guy with a chainsaw with everything on show. And that's how the whole film plays out, with Chandler doing some investigating, largely told by a narration, because this film is quite clearly a neo-noir satire spoof, followed by some over-the-top nudity and violence because it has a 80s splatter horror comedy veneer. And if that sounds like your kind of thing, and hell, why wouldn't it? Then you're gonna love what this film has to offer. Nothing in this movie is taken particularly seriously, and that includes our 4 main characters. Jay Richardson, as Jack Chandler, is a wise-talking private detective on the hunt for a runaway, who acts as both protagonist and old-school narrator, pushing the narrative forward in his search for Samantha. He's a pretty decent character and has a whole bunch of amusing lines throughout, played straight for the most part, but obviously very tongue-in-cheek, winking at the camera, and that makes his character even more amusing to me. Michelle Bauer is Mercedes, the chief chainsaw-wielding hooker, a character replete with a cracking set of headlights, the film's own words, not mine, a whole bunch of double entendres, and one of the funniest murder scenes I've seen in a long time, when she goes all Patrick Bateman on a poor guy, wearing nothing but a shower cap. She's also Michelle Bauer, who is one of the preeminent scream queens of the 80s, and she brings a full range to the screen here, if you know what I mean. There are also various other cult acolytes who bring their own specific assets and skills to the screen. You are literally only ever about 5 minutes from a fresh pair of headlights is what I'm saying. I'm in my 40s and I can't say I've ever heard a massive pair of melons described as headlights, but this film does and I'm running with it. Gunnar Hansen plays a shadowy cult leader who spends the first half of the film hanging out in bushes doing his best pervert impression. I'm just going to throw this out there. There's no way he could see what is happening in this windowless bathroom. Not that that little fact stops him looking very pleased with what is happening. Like I said, not much of this film's plot is exactly taken seriously. He doesn't have much to do other than hang out in the shadows during the first half of the movie before being fairly pivotal to the absolutely wild ending. Our final character is Samantha, played by the ever lovely Linnea Quigley, a runaway who Jack has been sent to track down but who has a dark secret of her own when finally found. I am of the opinion that Linnea Quigley is probably the best 80s scream queen. Let me know yours down in the comments below. So I may be biased when I say it's always a pleasure to watch anything she's in. Here is no different, where she brings her usual blend of naive yet incredibly sexy sweetness to the screen. All of the characters have a comedic turn, adding to the humorous nature and tone of the film. There are also some recognisable B-movie faces, such as Fox Harris, a regular collaborator of director Fred Olen Reyes, as a guy who just really wants to take some nude pictures for his Little League Baseball back calendars. What can I say, the 80s is an entirely different time. Like I said a few times already, nothing in this flick is played seriously. It has a very camp and over-the-top tone right from the start, with everything being played for laughs, including the nudity and violence. We even open with a jokey warning. Then, right from the off, maybe even as soon as the second or third scene, the tone is set with the aforementioned Michelle Bauer full frontal chainsaw murder, where she's covered in gallons of very fake blood and body parts, whilst laughing maniacally, covering the door in plastic sheeting and her hair with a shower cap that leaves the bed the poor guy she's hacking to pieces entirely uncovered. It sets the tone for the silly, over-the-topness the film is going for in both its sexiness and violence. Neither of which make, much like everything else here, you can take that seriously really. Another thing that isn't taken at all seriously is the dialogue. There are a whole lot of double entendres, such as,
"You construction workers really turned me on."
Must be the way we pound nails.
one-liners,
"You could have knocked me over with a pubic hair."
lines that are funnier just for the way that they are said.
"I'm going to fuck your brains out."
I didn't like the sound of that.
There's even a couple of visual gags thrown in for good measure, with an obviously underage kid sat at the bar with a martini in front of him, the implication being pretty obvious. There's also a fairly silly visual gag towards the end where Samantha and Jack are looking for the cultist temple, saying it would help if there was a sign, then come across this right after.
Look there!
Yeah, it's silly, and yet I laughed out loud at just how obvious and silly a joke it is. The tone of the film is very much, what if we took a noir detective story and turned it into a typical low-budget 80s splatter horror comedy, and I think it nails that perfectly. Obviously, never taking itself seriously, and everyone here knows what they're making and it works as a result. There is, of course, a whole bunch of implied graphic violence. I say implied because what you actually see is a hooker thrust a chainsaw towards someone, then cut to obviously fake blood literally being thrown out of a cup at something else, usually their boobies, headlights. It's not at all scary, pretty much played for laughs, and as I say, not even really graphic in terms of its violence, as most of that happens off screen. There is, however, a fantastic chainsaw fight between Michelle Bauer's character and Linnea Quigley in the final temple sacrifice showdown, which I can't really show you much of because Linnea Quigley has her headlights out for all to see, and YouTube doesn't like that. They ain't fans of it. The ending suggests there will be a sequel. We even get a card saying that one called Student Chainsaw Nurses is coming soon. Sadly, that never materialized. Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers is definitely not a film for everyone. It's silly camp horror that spoofs 50s noir, but if you are a fan of that, then it is an absolute blast to watch. Very funny, incredibly entertaining, and doesn't overstay its welcome. Having a particularly short runtime of only 75 minutes, I'd give this 8 headlights out of 10, which is ironically probably about the same amount of actual headlights you're gonna see if you choose to watch this one. Thanks for watching. I plan on getting back to doing more retrospectives from now on, so if you want to see those, make sure to subscribe and maybe even leave me a like.